gonna try and get as much of this video filmed before the sun officially goes down. Do we like having Stitch and Angel's butts in the video? How cute are these little cuddlies pillows? My daughter is literally obsessed with Lilo and Stitch. So naturally when we saw these two on an end cap in Target, we had to get them. So they just look out the window during the day. Okay, you guys, I am so excited about this month's reading wrap up because I had the best reading month I have ever had in the month of October. I did read 12 books and I listened to 1 book. So we consumed 13 books in the month of October, which I'm super happy about. Of the 8 books that I had on my October TBR, I've only read 4 of them, and I'm okay with that because I knew that I wanted to really lean into thrillers in October. I am someone who avoids thrillers at all costs, so I really wanted to lean into thrillers, and I had purchased quite a few thrillers going into this month, specifically so that I could consume all the thrillers. So I'm really excited to share all of the books that I read, my thoughts on them, etc. So if you're interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel, I hope you consider doing so before you go. And other than that, let's jump into the video. Okay, so I just realized these are stacked in order that like I most recently read. Like I'm filming this on the 30th. By the time this goes up, who knows what day it'll be, probably like the 30th of November. But I haven't quite finished the Xhex, but I will finish it in the next couple of days. We're gonna start from the bottom. I do also have 1 reading vlog out, reading 5 thrillers. I don't know what happened, but the last 2 videos that have gone up, I like scheduled them, and in my mind I didn't schedule them, so like I never went back to like get my thumbnail up before they actually published, and by that point I just like gave up. But I did post a reading 5 thrillers, so if you're interested about like further thoughts on any of my thrillers, I'll leave that vlog down below. But we kicked it off not strong at all in the month of October. We started with the book Credence by Penelope Douglas. I've read 2 books now by Penelope Douglas, 2 I think. This is definitely the worst of the 2. So this is Credence, and this is essentially a taboo romance. In this book, I like don't remember any of the character. I like cared so little about what was actually going on. I will say the spice in this book was good. It was like, it was good. But like I was skimming pretty much everything else. And like honestly, I could have just done without reading this book. But you're following Tiernan in this book. Her parents like tragically die, but like also her parents just like did not care about her at all. But still I like didn't care about her at all. But anyway, her parents tragically pass away and she's not quite 18. So her parents like wanted her to go live with her dad's brother, who lives in Colorado, and they live in this town that like basically gets snowed in for like months at a time, and like you can't leave to like go anywhere. And her stepdad, is it a stepdad? No, it's not a stepdad, it's her uncle essentially. Her uncle, where am I going with this? Oh, her uncle has 2 brothers. I literally could have, like, I could not have cared less about any of the characters in this book. It essentially, like, Tiernan gets there and like everybody's just like so horny already, and it's like, really, like, you know, when there's just like no build up to it, it's just like part of the fun is the chase, part of the fun is like the build up. I really wouldn't recommend this book. Like I said, the spice in this I did really enjoy. I did enjoy the spice, but I still could have, like, I would have been just fine reading a different spicy book. So I did give this a 2 out of 5 stars because the spice, I was like really enjoying the spicy scenes. Okay. Then we started with our first thriller of October, and I read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I have never read a Riley Sager book before. I was really enjoying this book. Like, I loved the setting. I'm from Minnesota, so like cabins and like lake houses, like that is like the vibe in Minnesota. So I was loving the setting, and as I was reading this, I was like trying to guess the plot oh my gosh, could I speak? The plot twist, as one does as they're reading a thriller. And what ends up happening at the end is just like so unbelievable. Like, you couldn't even really guess it because it's so unbelievable. And I just found that to be a little disappointing. I did still give this 4 out of 5 stars because I really loved this book up until like the last maybe 50 pages, and I was like, really? Like, is this really the direction that we were going? But I did enjoy this, and I would recommend it. So in this book, you are following Casey, and she basically like loses her husband the previous year, and she's like going through it. She's struggling with alcohol addiction, and so she goes away to her lake house to just like kind of decompress, get away from the media. And one thing she likes to do while she's at the lake house while drinking is to spy on her neighbors with her binoculars. And she finds that this couple across the street, she meets them, and she like becomes really like, she really likes Catherine, who is the woman who lives across the lake, but she doesn't like Catherine's husband, who I believe is Tom. Yes, Tom. So anyway, she watches them. She thinks Tom has it out to basically kill Catherine for various reasons, and then a bunch of stuff happens. I would recommend this. I think it's like a tame thriller in my opinion. I think part of the reason I've been so afraid of thrillers is because I feel like I get scared super easily. But I would say like this didn't leave me like having to sleep with a nightlight on. Okay, then I moved on to The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. I was super excited for this book because it says very dark and twisted, and then there's a quote on here that says Gone Girl on speed. Up until this point, Gone Girl is like one of the only thrillers I've read, but I freaking loved that book. Like, I can still remember finishing that book and the feeling I had while finishing that book. It's like I can remember where I was when I finished that book. It like had an effect on me. So I was so excited to read this because I was like, ooh, is this like gonna give me the same feelings? And I will say I enjoyed this book, but I do not see the similarities really between Gone Girl and this. Like, I think they're going two separate directions. Like there's like a married couple in it, and like that's really that's the married couples and like infidelity, but like I don't see how they're much similar beyond that. Anyway, in this book you are following Ted, who runs into Lily at an airport bar. Their flight is delayed and they end up having a couple drinks together. Ted expresses to Lily that he has caught his wife in an affair, and he makes this like snide remark that he wants to kill his wife, and Lily essentially is like, well, if you want to kill your wife, I can help you do it. And a lot of this book is kind of like visiting Lily's past. You find out a lot about her and her character, and this book is, if I'm remembering correctly, split up into 3 separate parts as well. And each part, like, there's things that like I wasn't necessarily expecting. There is one thing that I definitely saw coming, but there's a lot in here. There's actually, I did see quite a bit coming in this book. There's a lot in here though that like, it's just like one thing after another. I did enjoy reading this. It was an entertaining time. I did give this 4 out of 5 stars as well. I just had high expectations, and it didn't quite meet those expectations, but I would still highly recommend reading this book. I thought it was fun. I will say there were some like really gruesome things that were described in this book. I'm specifically thinking of like something that happens in Lily's youth and what she does to one person. I was like, oh, like that's disgusting. There's a few things that like turned my stomach a little bit with this book, but I still like it and I still recommend it, even to someone who's afraid of reading thrillers. Then I can't remember if I took a break and read this book or if I listened to Riley Sager's The Only One Left. Maybe I'll talk about that one just so I don't forget it. I wanted to give Riley Sager, and I don't want to say another chance, but I really enjoyed House Across the Lake, but I wanted to read another Riley Sager book, so I ended up listening to The Only One Left, and I really enjoyed that book. I thought it was a really great listening experience as well. I really was super entertained the whole time I was listening. I find when I listen to audiobooks, sometimes I have a better like depiction in my head. Like I find it easier to actually like have more vivid depictions in my mind of like what's going on, whereas sometimes I'm reading, I like really struggle to like actually like create the characters in my mind. Like I'll have to like go onto a Pinterest board and like get someone in my mind. Like I struggle with that, but I find that it helps when I listen to an audiobook. So in The Only One Left, you are following, I cannot remember the characters' names at all, but there is basically a caretaker who is, something tragic happens in her life and she's essentially being blamed for her mother's death, and she's a caretaker. She gets sent to caretake this old woman who, the old woman is thought to have murdered her entire family, and while they're together, the old woman is essentially telling her life story to the caretaker, and you're like basically putting together the pieces to like solve the puzzle as you go. And it was just so entertaining. It was so entertaining. I believe I gave this one a 4 out of 5 as well. There was a lot happening at the end, some of it believable, some of it not, but overall I really enjoyed my experience listening to this. I think I would have enjoyed reading it as well. Again, if you're afraid of reading thrillers, I didn't find this one too scary, and I would highly recommend that one. Okay, then we took a turn for the worst, and I read Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Meyer, and I just didn't really enjoy this book. I was quite bored while reading this book most of the time. There were like moments throughout this book where like action was like happening and I thought things were like turning around for the better, but overall I just like didn't really care about the characters at all. I didn't really care about the romance that was like budding, and I didn't realize that this, I think, is going to be part of a series. And like when this book ended, it kind of ended on a cliffhanger, and I just like I don't even remember what the cliffhanger was, nor do I really care about continuing on in the series. I did end up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars because there were those moments where like I was entertained in the action. Like I really saw things happening for the book, but then it just didn't actually come to fruition. So in this book you were following Evie, and she essentially becomes the assistant to the villain. The villain is also just like called the villain. He does have a name. I think it's Tristan, if I'm remembering correctly, but mostly he's just referred to as a villain. And I feel like there's like moments where like this is trying to be like funny and cute, and I just like didn't think it was at all. I don't know. I wouldn't really recommend this book. I wasn't that wowed. So I feel like maybe I should lower my rating. But there were moments where I was like, okay, we're on to something here. And I was like, okay, we need to turn things around. And Once Upon a Broken Heart was on my October TBR. So I decided that I wanted to do a reading vlog, reading all three, like reading the series, because the 3rd book came out at the end of October. But then as I was reading it and like getting into like book 2, I was like, I don't really feel like I can film a reading vlog because it's gonna be like all spoilers. So I kind of gave up the reading vlog, and I totally binged the first 2 books. So in this book, you are following Evangeline, who essentially wants to stop the marriage of her true love, who's set to marry her stepsister. So in order to do so, she strikes a deal with the Prince of Hearts, and essentially throughout the book she learns that like maybe striking a deal wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. I don't really know what more I can say that won't be a spoiler to the book. I will say I did give book 1 4 out of 5 stars. I feel like because you're kind of like building up the backstory, it was a little bit, I don't want to say slow to get into because it read really, really quickly, but I was left feeling not a 5-star feeling. I just wasn't left with that 5-star feeling, but I still overall really enjoyed my time. And I feel like if you're a beginner to fantasy, this is a really great place to start, because there are fantasy elements to this, but it's not like a bunch of world building and super hard to understand. I really enjoyed this. It kind of reminds me of like reading a Jennifer Lynn Barnes book, and that it just reads so quickly. It's so bingeable, very hard to put down until you finish. So I moved right into The Ballad of Never after finishing that. And I will say The Ballad of Never After, as I was reading it, I thought I was gonna give it like a 4.5 star, but the last 50 or so pages, like the plot twist in this book, I like did not see coming, but it was so perfect to the story that like after I finished, I was like 5 stars. Yep, like this is 5 stars. And again, I don't really know what I can say without ruining anything, but just know this series is so good. And book 2 is by far my favorite in the series. Okay, after reading that, I had a couple more thrillers that I needed to read. So I did read Lisa Jewell's None of This Is True, and I really enjoyed this book. Again, this is in my reading vlog if you want to hear more thoughts. In this book, you are following Josie and Alex. Both of them are birthday twins. They were born on the exact same day in the exact same hospital, and they run into each other at a pub on their 40th birthday. And Josie sort of has this like obsession with Alex, and she starts like following her around and essentially strikes up a deal with Alex to do a podcast basically like about Josie. Alex is already a podcaster. She does podcasts on very successful women. And Josie's like, you know, I'm not a successful woman, but I'm planning to turn my life around very shortly. And so you get a lot of like Josie's backstory in the book, as well as a little bit of Alex's life. It's very psychologically thrilling. And like the whole time, like I feel like both main characters are quite dislikable. Definitely Josie more than Alex, at least in my opinion. But throughout the book, and especially at the end, you're kind of left wondering like what was even true. And it's very just like creepy and just dark, but there's not like gruesome murdering happening at all. Throughout the book, there's like, oh, I talked about this. I gotta find an example. There is, okay, so it'll say like, hi, I'm your birthday twin, a Netflix original series, and it'll give almost like a script of the Netflix series, and it literally felt like I was watching a Netflix documentary as I was reading this book. So in terms of the reading experience, I really enjoyed this one. I gave this either a 4 or 4.5. It's so hard because I like do my star ratings on Goodreads, and sometimes it's like I give it a 4 if it's a 4.5, but like it's actually a 4.5 now that I'm like starting to have read more books, but I don't necessarily comment to say 4.5, but I would give this a 4.5. It wasn't like, it's hard with thrillers too. I'm like, I know I was left with a 5-star feeling when I read Gone Girl, but I don't feel like I've been left with like a thriller 5-star feeling yet. But definitely a 4.5. And this is another one that I feel like is very like, if you're afraid of thrillers, I think you would really enjoy this. It's definitely more psychologically thrilling rather than like gruesome. Last thriller I read in the month of October was The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This, I like knew what this was about, but like it was not what I was expecting at all. This actually ended up being my favorite thriller of all of them. I would give this either like a 4.75 or even a 5-star. It's so hard to say because I'm like, what does a 5-star feeling feel like for a thriller? Because I just don't feel like I'm ever gonna go read or reread a thriller, except for I do want to reread Gone Girl because I already know what happens, you know. But in this book, you are following Emma, who again kind of has this very deep, dark, tragic past. She's house sitting at this like beach house that like is very secluded. I don't even know if you'd consider it a beach. Yeah, you would consider it a beach house. It's really secluded, and she is a huge reader. So she leaves a 1-star Amazon review or 1-star book review for this thriller that she read. And she and the author basically like get into it, going back and forth on her review that she left. And then like weird things start happening very shortly after she leaves that review. And I will say, like, I thought I saw something coming, but then like the author leads you in a different direction. You think what you thought wasn't true, but then like I actually was right about one thing. But this book at the end was like it was like one thing after another, just rapid fire, so much happening, so many things that you don't expect. There's like, this was so good. Like, I did not see it coming. It's so fast paced. You like cannot put this book down, and I just highly recommend this one. I will say this one, there wasn't like a ton of like gruesome things. Like there was some gruesomeness, but this definitely had a very dark, eerie feeling to it. Darker than I like anticipated it was going to, but still loved this. I thought it was so good, and I highly recommend checking out this one from Taylor Adams. Okay, so after reading that, I was kind of like, I don't know what I feel like reading. I feel like I need to read a romance because I've read so many like thrillers. But then I was like, I also need to focus on my October TBR, but I was like, but what do I feel like reading? So then I was really intimidated by this book, but I decided to pick up Vicious by V.E. Schwab, and let me tell you, I'm so glad that I did. So much so that I instantly had to go order the second book and read that one right after finishing this. This was so good. 5 stars, incredible. Definitely unlike anything else I've read, but just incredible. I didn't want to put this book down. I don't even know, like, just literally brilliant. So in this book, you were following Victor and Eli. Both of them are students at this kind of like prestigious college, and they have essentially like, I'm gonna call it like a senior capstone project to do. And Eli is doing his senior capstone project on EOs, which I didn't realize at the very beginning is like an extraordinary person. And Victor has this idea that he wants to kind of like put Eli's theories to test and see if you actually can create an extraordinary individual from, essentially Eli's theory is that extraordinaries are birthed out of like a near-death experience or like came back from the dead. And so Victor wants to put that to the test. And I don't think this is a spoiler, but I feel like it goes without saying that at least one of the characters in the book ends up with extraordinary abilities, and it essentially follows like the path of like right versus wrong, but like also very morally gray on both sides, and you're kind of like not sure who to root for, but like you do know who you're rooting for, but also like you don't know who to root for. And it's just, it sounds like on the surface level, I was like, this sounds like it's gonna be a slow read, like kind of boring, hard to get into. I literally could not put this book down. I wanted to know what happened. I really liked the characters, with the exception of I wasn't a huge fan of Eli personally, but even like the characters that I feel like are morally gray, I still was rooting for and like really enjoyed like all of the characters. So after finishing this, I wouldn't say this like necessarily left on a cliffhanger, but I loved it so much, and I didn't want to forget all of like the plot points or like all the things going on. So I ordered this and instantly jumped right into Vengeful, which is the second book in this duology. And oh my goodness, if I liked Vicious, I think I liked Vengeance even more. Marcella in this book, I like loved her. I feel like you were supposed to hate her, but I feel like she was just like a bad bitch sort of a girl. And like, I just loved her. I was like, get it, Marcella, like you go girl, you destroy everyone and everyone in your path. But again, so in this book, you're just, I feel like they kind of just like added characters. And again, you're kind of following this idea of like morally gray, like right versus wrong sort of situation. I don't really know how to like describe or say without ruining anything, but it's just so interesting. And I would say if you've been intimidated by this duology, like I truly could not recommend it enough. B.E. Schwab is like brilliant. I don't know how she came up with the concept for these, but these are like two of my new favorite books. And then Curse for True Love came out, read this in a day. I thought it was so good. I will say I only gave this a 4.5. I would give this a 4.5 stars. Like I really enjoyed it. I liked the ending. I liked like the path that we went down, but I just wasn't left with quite the 5-star feeling as I was after finishing the first book. And because this is the third book in the series, I really don't feel like I can say a whole lot without spoiling anything, but gave that one a 4.5. And then I'm wrapping up the month reading the Xhex. I was really hoping to get through the Xhex as well as the Kiss Curse, but that's just not gonna happen. I'm like hoping I can get through the Xhex in the next day and a half. It is Monday. Monday Night Football is on tonight, so I will read while I watch that. But you're essentially, in this book so far, we're just following Vivi, who is a witch, and she breaks up with Reese. I don't know if that's how you say his name. And then she's like basically upset over the breakup. So her and her aunt Gwen, like, and her cousin, I'm a little bit confused. I feel like I'm in a little bit of a reading slump after reading Vicious and Vengeful, I'm struggling to like care. But essentially Vivi, Gwen, and something with an A, they put a curse on Reese, and he's like just finding out that now he like has a curse on him. It's funny, like there's definitely some funny moments, and I'm excited to keep reading it because I just feel like it's like the perfect witchy vibes for Halloween, which is tomorrow. But do I think this is gonna be a 5-star? No. And that, you guys, is my book stack, my reading wrap up for the month of October. I am so proud of myself for reading all of these books because I feel like I've never really challenged myself to think I could read over 10 books, so I'm so happy, and I feel like I had so many great books. And I'm so glad that I gave thrillers a chance because I really had so much fun with all of the thrillers that I read. So okay, we're speaking of thrillers, then my ice machine just dropped ice. that scared me a little bit. If you guys have any thriller recommendations, let me know what they are in the comments below, because I would love to try and read like a thriller a month. I will say I'm feeling a little slumpy, like a little bit slumpy. I'm like, I don't know what to read. I just filmed my TBR jar chooses my November reads, but I'm feeling like a little bit uninspired, like I can't get into a book right now. So we'll see how November goes, but that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch and for supporting me and my channel, as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.